Well, I would like to welcome everybody. My name is Luciano Castillo. I'm part of the search committee of our next dean here at Purdue University. I really want to thank everybody for coming. I also want to thank the audience that is joining us in virtually as well. And today we have our first candidate, one of the finalists for our next dean. This is a very, very important position. And I would like to welcome all of you, but I also would like to welcome Dr. Arvind Raman. He's the Executive Associate Dean here in the College of Engineering. He's also the Robert V. Adams Professor of Mechanical Engineering. He also has an appointment, courtesy appointment in Material Science. He received his PhD from UC Berkeley with the legendary Dr. Mott. And then he also received his master's degree from here at Purdue and his undergrad degree from Indiana Institute of Technology. He joined us here in 2000 in the mechanical engineering. He rose in all the ranks here at Purdue in the mechanical engineering, all the way to become an endowed chair professor. He has served in many different roles, as many of you may know, including the Associate Dean for Global Engineering Programs, the Interim Director of the Executive Director for the Global Programs, and he's also the founder of the USDA-funded center, the LASER. And as you know, he has played a very important role mentoring, hiring faculty. So what we're gonna do, he's gonna talk for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna have about 30 more minutes for questions and answers. So let us welcome our candidate, Dr. Arvind Raman. Thank you, Arvind. Thank you.
Let me do a mic check first real quick. Can you hear me all? Great. Well, thank you, Luciano, and thank you to the search committee for giving me the opportunity to be here with you all today. Good morning. Good morning to everyone. I'm really excited to meet with so many Boilermaker engineering faculty, staff, and students during these 2 days. I first came to Purdue more than 30 years ago now as a master's student, and I returned in 2000 as a faculty member, as Luciano just said, and every year since then, I've always been amazed to see how much more there is to learn about the university. And during these 2 days, I expect to learn a whole lot more in these 2 days as well. But today, I'm delighted to share with you some thoughts on how, together, we might build the future of Purdue engineering. By way of background, I am a faculty member in mechanical engineering with a courtesy in materials. And my research is in nonlinear dynamics, but I work in applications where the vibrating body couples to external fields of systems. In particular, my research group has helped advance the field of atomic force microscopy by enabling it to better measure the local physical properties of viruses, bacteria, and living cells, and also enabled it to see beneath the surface to reveal the three-dimensional structure of complex materials. The group has helped improve the sensitivity and reliability of nano and electromechanical systems for communications applications, for applications in sensors. And the group has also developed diagnostic tools for the early detection of balance deficits and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis from postural vibration data of patients. The box at the right provides a summary by the numbers of the inputs and outputs of the research group. But the research group has also had an impact through its own graduates, many of whom have gone on to become faculty or careers in national labs, and also by developing a software called VEDA for simulating AFM, which was developed in partnership with some of these industry partners, which was deployed on the NanoHub, and today has become one of the world's most used simulation softwares for AFM. I have also had a chance to lead 2 major research centers. The first is what is today called the Shaw Family Global Innovation Lab, which I helped launch and raise the endowment for. And the lab really co-funds or seed funds faculty working with top NGOs around the world to try and develop technologies that, if scaled up, could have a significant impact on global health, on food security, et cetera. More than 30 such projects have been funded, and faculty have been very successful. Patents, startup companies coming out of it. But I think what's really interesting about this is that it has catalyzed the success of our faculty to secure funding from agencies and sources that we didn't used to traditionally get funding in the past from, such as the Gates Foundation, such as NIH Global Health or USAID, you know. As only one example out of many, my colleague Yuan Yi was co-funded to work with Catholic Relief Services to develop an electronic transparency and tracking system for delivering humanitarian aid in conflict settings, where in the past, CRS used to use a paper trail for this purpose. Not only was she and her student able to develop a software, get a software patent, it's been licensed, and it's already been used to deliver humanitarian aid to hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees in Poland and to 1 million internally displaced people in South Sudan. And as we speak, it's being evaluated by the World Food Program for worldwide deployment. I'm also the PI of LASER, which is one of Purdue's largest federally funded research programs, long-term assistance and services for research. And really what it does is engages researchers at higher education institutions at Purdue around the world to really address research and evidence base for USAID and partner countries and some of the most important development challenges that we're facing around the world. About 25% of the funding stays at Purdue, but all of it counts towards our NSF HERD expenditures. And the center is already having significant impact through 40+ projects around the world, helping change policy and practice in USAID and in partner countries. For example, in South Africa, LASER research has helped reveal the changing patterns of human trafficking through the pandemic, which is really helping that country's response to the challenge. I have taught at the undergraduate level in first-year learning community, senior capstone design and mechanical engineering, but most of my teaching has been at the junior level mechanics of materials class, where together with my colleagues Chuck Krausgrill and KJ Zhao, we've been able to publish a popular lecture book on the subject. I've obviously taught at the graduate level, including a very popular MOOC on atomic force microscopy with my colleague Ron Reifenberger. But let's move on to talking about the future of Purdue engineering. Purdue engineering is really at an enviable place today. Undergraduate programs are at scale, strong reputation. Our research expenditures, graduate rankings are at an all-time high. So the real question here is, where can we go to from here? Over what time frame? And equally importantly, what vision would be so compelling that in the years ahead, when we look back upon our collective efforts in the coming years, we'll all be really proud of everything we would have been able to accomplish. One way to think about this is to ask the question, what it might mean for Purdue engineering to be the most consequential engineering college in the nation by 2030. President Chiang has used the word consequentiality with respect to the university, and I'd like to use it as a framework to think about the future of Purdue engineering, because it really speaks to the extent to which the college might have the broadest and deepest positive impact on society, which is, after all, the underlying ethos of the engineering profession and really of our land-grant mission. So what might these attributes of consequentiality look like? Here are a few thoughts, obviously, for a lot of further discussion with all of you. I think that an engineering degree, especially one from Purdue, is one of the surest ladders to upward social mobility that exists. So wouldn't it be consequential if we could significantly increase the number of Purdue engineers coming from families with financial needs or first-generation college students, thereby uplifting families, transforming communities, one graduating student at a time? At a time when the number of traditional 18-year-old Americans going to universities continues to decrease, and at a time when only half of Indiana's graduating high school class has chosen some form of higher education, wouldn't it be consequential if we grow the engineering workforce for Indiana and the nation by broadening participation, significantly increasing the number of women engineers, underrepresented minorities, first-gen, those with financial need, veterans, and working adults? That's why I think it'll be most consequential if we can, in some reasonable measure, aim to be the home of the largest pool of the most talented, most diverse engineering workforce in the nation. Now, what would that look like? We might be number one in women engineers. We might be number one in the Big Ten Plus for URM, for first gen, for underrepresented minorities. We're not there yet, and a lot of work needs to be done. But these are consequential attributes we could aim for and strive for. I think we would also be known for cutting-edge curriculum and pedagogy. I think we would also be known for strong student-centric services. And we would also be known for experiential learning, which is totally unmatched, and jobs. All these are attributes that would define that most consequential engineering college. And I think we would also have innovated and broken away from the pack with respect to online master's programs and become undisputably #1 at the college level in online master's programs by that time. I think another attribute of consequentiality would be to be the public engineering college that's #1 for research and research impact. What might that look like? We would probably have most of our programs, graduate programs, ranked in the top 5. We would be on par with or exceed per capita research expenditures, per capita citations, per capita honorific recognitions, per capita patents compared to our top peers. And our graduates, PhD students and postdocs would be highly desired, both at top universities and at industries. And we'd have dozens of major, really big federal or private sector supported research centers addressing some of the most challenging problems and issues of our time. And I think the top engineering college would also be an engine for Indiana's economic growth and would really help empower US industry through partnerships. And I think the real opportunity space here is to unleash the potential of our student entrepreneurs along with faculty entrepreneurs to help make Indiana the startup heartland of America. Now, none of these attributes is going to be easy, but they will all be highly consequential. And I think we can do all this if we work together and with the support of university administration, stakeholders, and alumni. All this is possible. But what might be some strategies to try and get to this future? I think the first strategy looking ahead has to be recruiting, recognizing, and retaining excellent faculty. I think we've been really good with our open searches, and we've also started a dream hire process, which is really an opportunistic hiring method where we can identify exceptional talent regardless of what area they're in, regardless of rank they're hired in, and by the way, regardless of time of the year we're hiring in, which is great. But I think we can do a lot more with this. I think we really need to mainstream it and scale this process up so we can get exceptional talent no matter when, where, and what stage in their careers they're in. And so I think that is something we need to strive towards. I think another opportunity for us is to think of trying to attract faculty who have come from non-traditional backgrounds. What do I mean by that? Faculty who've had a few years in national labs, faculty who had a research career and did a pause in the research career to start up a company, to start a family, or took a break and went to industry and came back. And I look forward to working with the Provost's office to see how the probationary period can be modified in ways that allows us to attract and have these faculty succeed in the future as well. I think Indianapolis is going to be a huge magnet. We have to start really using Indianapolis to attract top faculty talent, especially as soon as we get some of the great research centers we plan to do in Indianapolis. I think that is something we should really pay attention to. I think attracting faculty and retaining faculty needs research space. And guess what? We don't have much of it. And so this is going to be a major challenge, I think, for the next dean. And really the opportunity here is to set in place plans for our next Flex Lab 2.0 right away, Potter Engineering Center right away. But I think we also need to collaborate across campus with respect to this. Discovery Park, we need to work with Discovery Park as they try to expand research space so our engineering faculty can have more of a footprint in those spaces. I think we can think of partnering with other colleges for new interdisciplinary research spaces, shared research spaces where engineering faculty would have more of a footprint. And so I think all that is going to be important. I think the race for faculty talent has heated up tremendously, in case you haven't noticed it in the last year. And I think it's going to be really important to raise endowments for our faculty. A rule of thumb I like to use is about 1/3 of our faculty should be endowed in some form or the other, if not upwards towards a half, and we are not there yet. And so I think the next dean, working with the heads, will have to do a lot to make sure that we're able to really get these endowments in place. One of the programs that I've been really fortunate and honored actually to start is our faculty recognition program. It kind of works as like a small sponsored programs office. You get notifications quarterly about, hey, these are upcoming opportunities for being recognized by your professional society. We work with faculty to put some outstanding packages together for nomination. And by the way, we do about 70, 80 of them. And the results speak for themselves. In the last 3 years alone, we've been able to secure 8 National Academy of Inventor inductees, which has allowed us to jump over Georgia Tech Engineering and become the number 3 college in engineering in the nation in terms of NAI inductees. We've been successful with NAE. nominations and a record number of early career faculty recognitions as well. But I think the scale of our faculty and accomplishments of our faculty is so much larger than what we have been able to do. I personally think this program needs to be scaled up 2x, 3x to really reflect the accomplishments of our faculty. So that's going to be important to do moving ahead. I think it's really important to create a welcoming environment for all our faculty so they can all be successful. And that means getting rid of systemic obstacles to success. And one of the challenges that we faced early on when I started this job was many faculty were primary caregivers for young children were pointing out the challenges they were facing when they were going to professional society meetings and were incurring significant additional childcare costs. So my team worked with many offices across campus and came up with a policy. It's called Childcare Expense Reimbursement for Travel, which has actually helped reduce, to some extent, barriers for such faculty, and actually was featured in the Science magazine as shown here. And I really look forward to identifying and doing away with, as soon as possible, any such obstacles in the future. And I think it's really important to hold each other accountable with high expectations and excellence in everything we do. Whether it's research, research impact, graduate student mentoring, education, engagement, hiring faculty, promoting tenure faculty, but do it through collaboration and mentorship. I think the bonds of collaboration and mentorship have frayed during the pandemic, and I look forward to hearing ideas on how we can rebuild that really well. I think the federal funding opportunities that are coming down from the government, NDAA, IRA, CHIPS and Science Act, Build Back Better, provide a once-in-a-generation opportunity, really, to really expand our research impact, research enterprise. On one hand, the university is doing and should be doing many things, like really working closely with our congressional delegations, working closely with our Economic Development Corporation, working with industry partners, getting big capture teams ready and set up months in advance, preparing for these opportunities. And by the way, all other AAU institutions are doing this. So that has to happen, but I think it's worth kind of stepping back and taking a long view of the opportunities and challenges. What's coming down the pipeline is not a spike of federal funding. It's not a delta function. It's more like a step function. What we're looking at is significantly increased levels of funding from the federal government for many years into the future. The question really is, how are we going to expect our faculty to get a bigger slice of all that federal funding when their plates are already overflowing? In fact, I believe that the engineering colleges that are really going to move into high gear with this new era of federal funding are those that would have set in place all the conditions necessary for maximizing faculty research productivity. What might that look like? I mean, certainly we need to look at balancing the enrolled students to tenure track faculty ratio. Right now, we are well above any of our public peer institutions in that regard. That needs to change. So there might be a level playing field for our faculty to compete. Something has to come off the plate. But as all of you know, it's very hard to change that ratio quickly. It's very hard to hire really talented faculty that quick. So this ratio will change. I hope we're able to get it back to where it needs to be, but it'll change slowly over a few years, not overnight. So it is important to think of alternate ways in which we can really boost research productivity. What are some ideas there? Well, one is graduate students. Most faculty know instinctively that a great graduate student is a force multiplier in the research group. Not only do they do great research, they bring the quality and excellence of everyone in the research group. And it's hard to hire such students anymore. We're doing many great things in our graduate program. Virtual grad showcases really helped increase applications and so on. But I think there's a few things we can still do to improve this graduate and postdoc talent pipeline. I think first, one thing that the college and schools did is implement a historic increase in minimum graduate student type stipend and average stipend to bring us closer to our top peers. But I think we can do more. There is still a gap with our top competitive peers. And I look forward to figuring out ways by which we can do this fast and quickly so that we're on the same footing, attracting the same quality talent that our top peers are doing. We've got to get to that place. I think that's going to be really important to do. I think another opportunity to look at is graduate student pipelines, both domestic and international. Something that we were already doing successfully is the Purdue Military Research Institute, and I look forward to ways how we can push that up and get more active military officers come for PhDs here. I think partnerships with the HBCUs is a great idea. We need to build pipelines for graduate talent with those partnerships as well. Internationally, we can do a lot really to build graduate student pipelines from Latin America, from Sub-Saharan Africa, from the Middle East, from Europe, from Asia. We were already doing some of these things before the pandemic, but I think it's time to re-energize our efforts to really build a diverse base of top international students and postdocs for a graduate program. So I look forward to doing that. I think a third dimension with respect to grad students and postdocs is I think all of us agree that Purdue engineering PhDs and postdocs are probably very underrepresented amongst faculty at top 10 engineering colleges. We have to change that dynamic somehow, we really do. And we have to do it in a way that does not devalue students who choose industry careers as an option. But it has to happen, that dynamic has to change. So I look forward to ideas that help us move in that direction. I think another key thing that we can do is strategically invest in staff for supporting research in a way that complements what the EVPR is doing. So I personally think, for example, that we could do with more staff in the college that help in proposal development, more staff that help in launching centers, more staff that help with business operations, more staff for research communications. I think all of these things are things we need to do, and I look forward to figuring out ways by which we could do all of this. I think research infrastructure and equipment is another big deal. And I look forward to working with the EVPR to figure out ways by which we can strategically invest in research infrastructure in a sustainable and effective manner so that our faculty are really on a level playing field with their competition. We shouldn't be entering this era of substantially increased federal funding, hobbling our faculty and competing for the big faculty grants. And so that is something I think we really need to work on. And I think what is really important is we should continue to make sure that faculty success in research is incentivized, and really that obstacles to such as bureaucracy in the whole research operations, whether it be from pre-awards, contracting, post-awards, procurement, that they're all ironed out. So it really works in a streamlined fashion. So I look forward to continuing to do that in the future. Going back to that one attribute of being the pool or the home of the largest pool of best prepared, most diverse students. What might be our strategies there? I think the goal of significantly increasing women engineering students from Purdue, URM students, first gen, vets, those with financial needs, is a complex challenge. On one hand, it involves how we message engineering to these demographics. It involves partnerships with high schools, community colleges. It involves admissions. It involves scholarship dollars. It involves mentoring, networking, support, professional development. On the other hand, we're all waiting to see what the Supreme Court says in this regard. And in fact, Purdue will have to change and review many of its policies likely. But I think it's helpful to kind of step back and take a look at and reflect on what works and what might we continue to work on, regardless of what comes down the pipeline from the Supreme Court. So what are some things we have learned and we might do? The first, Women in Engineering program and the Minority in Engineering program are crown jewels in the college. They deserve our gratitude and utmost support in the future. What's the second thing that we have learned? Scholarship dollars really matter. And so I really look forward to continuing to raise funds for the Emerging Leaders program. And in fact, we also need to do a lot more for raising funds for students with families with financial needs, i.e. students who are receiving federal and state financial aid. We got to figure out a way to create supplementary fellowships, for those students as well. So I think that's going to be important. I think a third thing that's going to be important is focusing on partnerships in-state with key high schools and with community colleges to help build their capacities in the future. There's a higher probability that their graduates will come to Purdue Engineering. So these are all things we need to be thinking about and doing with respect to really having that most diverse workforce in the nation. I think going back to the theme of the best prepared workforce, there are many things we're doing really well already. I was really pleased to see the new initiatives on advising that have come out and on CAPS and psychological support, mental health for students. And it really shows that the university is investing in the well-being of the whole student, not just in the academic success part of it. So I really think that is really good. I think also that the college has been very market response and agile in launching concentrations, minors, that line up with market needs. And so that's really good too. And I think the initiative on agile reform of the curriculum has been great. Colleges and schools are actually thinking through what they teach and the contents, and in fact changing the sequence of courses or modifying them substantially. And so I think that needs to continue. But I wanted to step back and maybe highlight what I see are opportunity spaces, significant opportunity spaces. One of them is experiential learning. Purdue Engineering has actually always been a pioneer in experiential learning, where the science of learning is integrated into the design of the program. The program is integrated into the curriculum and is a part of the accreditation process. EPICS, VIP are great examples. But our students take a whole number of other experiential learning experiences, right? It's research, it's global, it's internships that don't necessarily have that scaffolding behind, integrating the science of learning, assessment, and supervision really in it. And so I think that is a really interesting opportunity space, as is the fact that across the nation, many colleges are really innovating in this space. Some, like Georgia Tech, for example, have created the CreateX program. It's a pathway for experiential learning, you might say, but through entrepreneurship. Others have done global grand challenge programs. So I think the opportunity space here is, if we could create a framework under which there'd be many pathways of experiential learning, all of them informed by the science of learning, in a way to maximize the professional skills that students get from these experiential learning experiences. That will be very hard to do. It's not easy, but it would be consequential, especially if we could make it reach a vast majority of our students. So I think that is a real opportunity space. In fact, who knows, if we're able to pull this off, we might be in line for a second Gordon Prize in National Academy of Engineering. So that is something important. I think another place to think about is internships. We've been really good at industry internships, and we need to expand it more, especially with the Indianapolis presence. But I think there's another opportunity in public service. Last year I had the opportunity to host Secretary of State Antony Blinken. One doesn't normally get to say that very often, but I had a chance to do that. Host him for a session with engineering students. And I remember very well, the day before the event, I actually had a meeting with the students who were going to attend. Many of them were from our WE program. And I was surprised by how much interest there is among students for a career in public service, engineering students. And in turn, State Department was here. They had a booth in our IR, for jobs in the State Department. Why? Because they want tech-savvy people in the Department of State. So I think what is happening is this Gen Z that is coming through and, being admitted to our college right now, they have seen the role of the state and federal government in responding to the pandemic. They're seeing what's happening with the Ukraine war. They're concerned about climate change and clean energy. They're seeing the role that a muscular industrial policy is playing in changing economic development, CHIPS Act, for example. And they're interested in public service, careers in public service. So really, I think an opportunity here is to think about opening a pathway, concentration or something, a certificate in engineering for public service that helps place their students. As a part of it, they'd be placed in Indianapolis, in the state government, where they'd be placed in Washington, D.C., CDC, USDA, Pentagon, Department of State. So I really look forward to figuring out ways by which we can expand on this and make this happen and tap into what I think is a desire to really be in public service by our students. And in turn, by the way, all these agencies want to see more engineers in there, Purdue engineers in particular. So I think that's going to be important to do. I think in everything we do here, leveraging the Indianapolis campus is going to be very important. In everything I spoke about, experiential learning, internships in the State Department, increasing the diversity of our students, Indianapolis is going to play a key role. I think we can do a lot more to create endowed professorships. It's been a long while since we've done this. Endowed professorships for teaching excellence and for lecturers. And finally, I think a big opportunity space for this, and I mentioned this earlier, is online master's programs. Why am I so enthused about it? Well, first, 3 of our disciplinary online master's programs are ranked #1. You don't get to be ranked #1 very often. When you do that, you don't sit. You really separate yourself from the competition and get way ahead, create that big gap. That's what needs to happen. But really what's interesting is the opportunity for us to expand. We have about 1,500 students in online masters. It is the one place that we can actually go 2x, even 3x. But we can also innovate in very interesting ways, using ed tech, using research to increase engagement of students who are studying online masters, to increase learning outcomes, and in fact, at scale, to bring in online labs into our online master's programs. All this will, I think, help differentiate us and really make us impactful for online master's programs, which really impact working adults. And so I think that's also an important opportunity space looking ahead. But as we think about all these things, it's really important to keep in mind that none of this is going to be possible without recruiting and retaining excellent staff. And I know there are several challenges staff face, from benefits, compensation, to working in remote, to hybrid environments, and I look forward to working with HR and CFO to addressing some of those challenges. But I still think that a lot more can be done with staff development and recognition. And I look forward to ideas to see how we can do that better together. I think it's going to be really important to partner across campus. Certainly with the business school, with the IBE program, that's a huge opportunity of growth, and we need to think of ways to really leverage that. I think we should be thinking about continuing seeding research collaborations with College of Agriculture like we've been doing and other colleges. I think we should be also exploring the potential for shared research spaces, maybe for life sciences and biomedical with CVM, with College of Agriculture, so we can expand research footprint for our faculty in this area. Or perhaps with HHS in creating spaces that are designed for human subject research, because a lot of our faculty are not just working on the virtual physical dimension of engineering, but the human dimension of engineering. So it's more of a triangle that we need to think about. So I think all these are opportunity spaces we need to work on. All of this is going to take a lot of fundraising to do, there's no doubt, and I'm sure all the heads in the college and the dean are going to be spending a lot of time as a part of the campaign for Purdue to make this happen. But we need to be entrepreneurial in everything we do. Always figure out ways to create new revenue streams, and that's going to be important. But at the end of the day, that funding will never be enough. So we have to invest wisely and really leverage whatever exists. Try to get a 1 + 1 = 3 effect as much as possible, and take calculated bets and risks on some key things. So we need to do that. But I think what's really working in our favor, even if we don't have enough money for this, is what I think is a very favorable university policy environment coming from the leadership of President Chiang, Provost Wolf, and EVPR Plout. It's like having a wind at your back. Our attributes here, the ones that I mentioned, are very well aligned with all the new initiatives coming out of the university administration. That's going to push us forward, and we just have to run as fast as possible. So in conclusion, even while the world today faces a confluence, a convergence of some of the biggest challenges we have known, all at the same time. Conflict, geopolitical tech rivalry, pandemic, climate change and clean energy, engineering innovations such as mRNA, the James Webb Space Telescope, ChatGPT. If you haven't used it, do so. It's amazing. Carbon capture technologies, nuclear fusion, have provided much hope to humanity and remind us how vital engineering ingenuity is for the future of peace, prosperity, health, joy of living, and a healthy planet. And I think that Purdue Engineering can and should have a broad and deep impact on that future. So thank you for hearing me out, and look forward to Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raman, for a great talk. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Lots to think about there. I absolutely agree that engineering is important to the economy, to the world. That's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. But I'm curious. Purdue has shifted its enrollment significantly toward the STEM fields in recent years. What will you do as dean to ensure that we remain a university committed to interdisciplinary excellence and not become, shift further toward becoming Purdue Tech, if you will?
No, that's a really good question. Just by way of background, to give you a sense, I hate to say this, but probably a majority of my publications are not with engineering faculty. I have a lot with engineering faculty, many of them in the audience, but I have many. I've worked with HHS, ag, pharmacy, just probably 5 colleges publications. And actually one of the things I always tell new faculty is that if within the first 5 years you're not collaborating across engineering, and if within the first 10 years you're not collaborating widely across campus, you're missing the whole point of being here at Purdue, right? So point taken. I do think that having strong colleges that are not engineering is also very important for us. It's important for engineering. I mean, it's very hard for us to succeed without these collaborations. And really, how are we going to solve some of the biggest challenges we've got without these collaborations? So as I said, I pointed out places in which we can have mutual benefit working with colleges. Like I said, joint research spaces, seeding interdisciplinary research grants. That has to continue, and I look forward to doing it. And so, very important question, really important. I'm interdisciplinary myself, and I love the idea of this being a holistic university as well.
Thanks, Arun, for the great presentation. I have a question. I see a certain dilemma in the fact that we have this student to teaching ratio, faculty ratio, and the CHIPS Act wants workforce development. And we are committed to doing this, and I'm wondering, what are your thoughts how to get to the engineering numbers that we have promised to deliver for the workforce in the context of the CHIPS Act? Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg. That's a really good question. So I think we're speaking specifically about the semiconductors related programs. The SCALE program has already been successful in engaging researchers. And we have started our semiconductors 101 and first year engineering. All that is good. I think that Purdue Engineering has the scale to be able to supply the workforce needs for this. By the way, one important thing to keep in mind is despite the timing of where these investments are happening versus where the hiring is going to happen, there's a mismatch. There's a phase lag here, right? Because we are actually overbuilding our capacity in chips production with the CHIPS Act at a time when the demand is reducing. So really, there's going to be cyclic. The demand for, I think, semiconductor engineers, the bigger demand is going to be happening, a few years out. So we've still got time to fix this up. So that's one thing. Research investments in getting facilities reshoring will happen now. But the demand, I predict the demand for workforce is really going to be about 4 years out, 3-4 years out is when it will really hit it. So we got some time to figure this out. I think there's many dimensions to this. Number one, we really got to figure out how we message semiconductors. Having a guy in a bunny suit working alone in a clean room is not a good message to send out. That is not an exciting career choice. So we got to think of ways to really make it exciting and speak about chips as being the equivalent of, it's the new gasoline. Somehow it's what powers the digital economy, applications of chips, how chips are making a difference in humanity. So I think the messaging has to change. The fact most people don't even know, how there's hundreds of chips inside their automobile. So I think that public communication of what chips are about and why it's making a difference in people's lives will not only attract more talent, but will attract the kind of talent we're seeking. Get more women engineers, more underrepresented minority engineers interested in the field. So I think messaging is a lot part of it. We are focusing a lot on the programming, and that's a good thing to do, but messaging is going to be important, and it's a supply and demand issue. When the jobs start calling is when, we'll automatically get a, uplift for that. So I think it's a combination of these 3 things. Messaging, really changing how we message. It's about really integrating these programs. We started doing it with Semiconductors 101, and it's really working with industries to be sure that we're ready for the big demand when it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you for your presentation today. It was interesting to hear. My name is Madeline Milharsik, and I'm a sophomore in the undergraduate program in Environmental Natural Resources Engineering. So I wanted to hear if you could speak more about, as dean, what your initiatives for the undergraduate program in engineering would be.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I tried to highlight, I think, what I think are areas of opportunity here looking ahead. One thing that I'm really excited about is experiential learning. Well, we can do a lot with in-classroom learning. We can do a lot with things. We have to move away from, sage on the stage to, coach by the side. More, peer learning, more use of ed tech, XR, VR, and stuff in the classroom. So there's a lot we can do in classroom, pedagogy as well. But I think the other opportunity space is really outside the classroom, experiential learning, really scaling that up. And so some of the things I spoke about are scaling up internships, scaling up project-based learning, experiential learning, EPICS, VIP, maybe other streams. Maybe it's a CreateX for scaling up entrepreneurship among students in Indianapolis, maybe Grand Challenge Scholars. There's so many pathways to do for experiential learning to really multiply the professional skills beyond the technical skills that students are learning in the classroom, and internships. So I think that together, and amongst internships, the one that I'm really excited, that you'll be excited about, is engineering and public service. If I have a chance, I would love to create that program so you'd have an opportunity to do internships at EPA, at USDA, and really make a difference as an engineer, changing policy in the country. So these are some of the initiatives I'd love to see in place.
Thank you. I think a lot of engineers choose engineering because they want to make a difference. I know that's a big reason for me. How high of a priority would you say these undergraduate initiatives would be for you?
There are three, it's a really good question. It's like having to choose between children. I mean, you can't. I mean, there are three attributes, there are three kids. How can you choose one over the other? We have to do all three. And that is, in fact, our challenge to do. But we have to, because we have to aim towards consequentiality. We have to become the most consequential engineering college in the nation, let's say by 2030. 2030 is the artificial deadline, but it's a nice round number to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
To her question, I have my own personal question related to that, and you mentioned about policy, you mentioned climate change. Do you foresee a unique program between engineering and social sciences where the students could be able to have a strong background in policy, but a strong, solid foundations in engineering?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think going back to the areas of collaboration with the other colleges, I spoke about certainly the business school, spoke about research collaborations, spoke about research spaces, but there's a lot of opportunity in undergraduate program collaboration as well. We don't do a whole lot of joint programs with other colleges. It'll be really interesting because ultimately, we have to think a lot about our students and their success, and if what it takes to do that is a joint program with faculty in political science, that needs to happen. Faculty in forestry and natural resources, that needs to happen. So yeah, absolutely. It's a part of being more cutting edge with our curriculum. We have to keep up with the times. By the way, when I say market-driven curriculum, it's not just about what industries are saying. It's about what the students are saying they want to do. We need to respond on both ends with our curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. Yes.
So thank you for a great presentation, Erwin. You're talking about talents. We need talents to good raw material at Purdue. And we have fantastic reputation in the Americas, in Asia. But we have a little bit of white spot in Europe. And what can we do to have faculties in Europe? Of course, they know Purdue as an excellent school, but students don't know it. So we see very few European students here. Is there anything we can do more practically to increase that?
No, thank you, Jan Anders. It's a really good question, and maybe I can speak to one of my own experiences in this regard. I also thought it's hard to do to get talent interested in, because really from the outside, unfortunately, when you look from Europe, there is a brand value associated with the state you're in. If you're in the state of New York, that's considered good. If you're in California, that's considered good. If you're in Massachusetts, that's considered good. If you're in Indiana, if you're in you know, Minneapolis. People, like, it doesn't resonate. There's no brand value associated with that, right? But we have other brand values that are not, you know, geographic location. We have Neil Armstrong, right? So as one example, so one of the things, you know, when I helped set up one of our big exchange programs with University in Madrid, you'd be surprised how very quickly most of the students come to aerospace engineering here. It's a College of Engineering level, you know, a partnership with Carlos Tercero in Madrid. You know, our students who go there come from all disciplines, from mechanical, electrical, etc. The stampede there to come here is in aeronautics, astronautics. Why? Their eyes are wide, and they go, Neil Armstrong, Neil Armstrong. It's the home of Neil Armstrong. So I think that's an opportunity to think about is what are brand names that Purdue Engineering is associated with, and kind of use it as a means to bring top talent from Europe. Could we have a Neil Armstrong program for top graduate student talent from Europe? So that is, I think, one thing to do. And of course, we have to rebuild bridges. We have to have more exchange and partnerships all over Europe with some of the top places in Europe, EPFL, Cambridge, NTU in Athens, you know, just Eastern Europe, just all over. We need to re-engage with the world. We haven't done it through the pandemic, and we need to come up with great ideas. But brand, I think, is really important. And I think once you build a brand and students have a great experience, the pipeline starts. Thank you.
Well, I'm in the podium. I could ask more questions. I'm just kidding. So I have a question actually related to that, and you mentioned about partnerships, and it is expected, right? Everybody knows that the number of students from Asia are going to diminish in the next, is diminishing right now. How do you see Latin America playing an important role for our future pipeline of graduate education?
Oh yeah, I mean, tapping into the Western Hemisphere, it makes a lot of sense for us to do. And we've been successful at it in the past. We've had, you know, partnerships in Mexico and Colombia. We're doing it in Brazil. We need to keep expanding on that. I think what has happened is a lot of these partnerships have been kind of left withering on the vine, so to speak. And so we need to reinvigorate everything, re-engage Latin America. And I think it's a really good time to do so, because as we're coming out of the pandemic, global engagement is not a very high priority with some of our peer institutions. We're already noticing that when you go in at this time, and even starting last year, doors open at the highest level in some of the top universities. Then in the past, they would say, well, you know, stand in line behind MIT is what they used to say, right? Or something like that. All that's changed. We've been able to go, for example, in Brazil, have top-level, you know, partnerships with the top 3 institutions in Brazil. I tell you, this would not have been easy to do 10 years ago, but we're able to do this. So I think the opportunity is right, the timing is right, the talent is tremendous, and I think we can really scale that up by a significant factor. We have done it, by the way, in the past. Mm-hmm. We just need to reinvigorate all these things looking ahead. It's a great point.
Thank you. Jackie? Yeah.
So thank you for your presentation. I know that you had mentioned that you're interested in growing the online master's program. So, you know, my question is, what is your vision as dean for supporting schools, faculty, and even staff in growing those online master's programs? And kind of dovetailing with that question, we see that a lot, there are many more underrepresented minority students in that online pool, just because of increased access to kind of that graduate education. So what's your vision for bringing those online students kind of into that Purdue family? And how can you kind of really, again, kind of bring them into that Boilermaker family?
Well, thank you, Jackie, for that question. Really important question. And I wasn't able to go into the details of this when I was saying about innovating in, you know, in the online masters. The scale we'll achieve. Scale is a 2x, 3x. It's a tremendous. There's very few times you can ever say, I'm going to increase enrollment by 2x, 3x. That is a huge opportunity space. But it's really in the quality where we can get ahead of the competition. And I hope the secret behind what I hope might happen is we might be able to get an endowment to set up a center for research or practice and innovation in online learning. That's what I'm hoping we have to do at the back end. You know, while the university really works, Purdue Online, it looks forward to certainly partnering with Senior Vice President on this. But we can do a lot more with an engineering specific context on all these aspects. What are ways in which we can increase engagement, belonging? How can we get better student outcomes? Online labs in an online master's context is something we really need to think about. Many of our peer institutions at Johns Hopkins, for example, has been doing this pretty well. And so there are things we need to think about how to do, and I do think this is a ripe opportunity for research, ripe opportunity for taking to practice. But that's what I'm hoping. The engine behind this front end in terms of how we deliver content, what content we deliver, we can do with an engineering. Of course, the university is really looking after the big B2B deals and really scaling those things up. But that's what I hope happens. I see it as an opportunity. By the way, these three attributes are not independent: research, education. Whenever possible, when we try to push education, it should also help a research enterprise, and this is one great example of it.
Yes, I know you have a question. Yes, please.
So I know it's a second question, but as I tell my students, right, one of the measures of a good presentation is one that generates a lot of questions.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Tolerate me. I love, you're thinking about what we can do with the partnership in Indianapolis, right? That campus, part of the magic of that campus, right, is the diversity of its students compared to the diversity of our students. But as I understand it, one of the things that is fairly settled is that admissions process will be our admissions process. And so I was going to ask you, how do we prevent that campus from looking just like our campus if we control that admissions process?
No, I think it's a really good question. I mean, to be frank, Matt, we're going to have to see what comes from the Supreme Court ruling. It's going to change a lot of things coming down the pipeline. But as I mentioned, there are some things we know we'll have to do. I suspect that if we stick to our admissions criteria the way they are, the outcomes will be what we expect. But I think there is an opportunity to work with, I think what's going to happen is the work of preparing a more diverse workforce is going to shift more upstream. Working in partnership with local high schools in Indianapolis, community colleges, or other parts in the state to build their capacity, where the gaps are in AP classes and stuff that are preventing progress of students from those high schools. We may have to do that, think of ways to do that in a way that the probability that their graduates enter Purdue Engineering really increases. I think the other thing we can do, I mean, there's a whole bunch of potential barriers here. There are students, by the way, in Indianapolis who get admitted to Purdue Engineering, but they choose IUPI for many reasons. One of them is cost. Why? Because they can live at home. They can take a bus into work. They don't need a vehicle. So that's an access point also that, maybe I really think we should be thinking of an innovative first-year program in Indianapolis, which at least for the first year, those who are based in Indianapolis, you're not incurring the additional boarding or travel costs for it, right? So I think there are ways to build all this up, but I think it's based on partnerships, building capacity. The work shifts more upstream, I think. But internally, we try to innovate as much as possible to reduce all the other barriers that are there. If we're not allowed to deal with admissions criteria, these are the things we can do. But it can be done. Engineers always work in constraints and optimize and come up with creative solutions. So I know we'll be able to succeed.
So Arvind, quickly, thanks for a great presentation. We all know how much work this involves. Let me ask a provocative question. You talked about recovering from the pandemic and things that need to change. What's your take, and it's provocative, in speaking to a mostly empty room? Are these the type of things that we need to worry about?
Well, thank you, Alain. Which reminds me, thanks to all of you who are here, making my experience a lot better in speaking to a real audience as opposed to a virtual audience. So thanks to all of you. Again, I'm an optimist. I always think of glass half full kind of a thing. Well, it turns out I think there are if you're talking in terms of classroom spaces, this hybrid, this kind of, we're going to have students in Indianapolis taking our classes. How do we create a sense of belonging? And how do we, as a teacher standing on the stage, how do you feel you're part of the classroom when you don't see where the rest of them are? There's a lot of new ed tech in this space that allows a much more immersive experience with virtual audiences, right? So I think there are opportunities to think about this where we're sitting here on the walls that are all our students, there's ed tech that can also help make this more real. So I think we have to adapt. I think this has been, pandemic as a disruptor, has been a disruptor. We're going to have hybrid for a long time. But how do we retain the elements of a classroom, for example, that make it such a worthwhile experience when part of the people are hybrid? I think ed tech is a great space. I think of it as a space for innovation and doing things differently. And I hope that's where the answer is.
Yes, great. Yeah, thank you.
Greg Shaver, Mechanical Engineering Director at Herrick Labs. Thank you, Arvind. Great talk. I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit more about your role in the Dean's Office. You've been serving, and thank you for that, in the Dean's Office for some time. Can you talk a little bit more about the work that you've done in the Dean's Office and what you believe the impact has been and will continue to be? And also speak to the team of colleagues that you worked with and how you work with them to, if you will, lead or enable their contributions in that regard.
All right. This will take the remainder of 5 minutes for sure. Okay, so I got moved to this role of Associate Dean for Faculty about 5 years ago, completely different from what I was doing before. While before I was really traveling the world, trying to see innovations that are happening in research education, making opportunities for our faculty, for our students, did manage to do well. And we had a 2.5 times X growth in international experiences for our undergraduate students during this 3 years I was there. But since I came, I've learned a lot about the DNA of our process, which is the academic part of it. So here are a few things that come to my mind in terms of what I think are things that I think are really going to have an impact, that I was just happy to be at the right place at the right time, supported by a great dean, supported by colleagues to be able to do, right? I think that changing our promotion and tenure document, changing the template was a big deal. Honestly, when I was asked to do this, I had no idea. How could you even do this? There are colleges, universities around the country that have no idea that it's set in stone. You can't do anything. So even the idea of how do you influence and shape and build consensus and come up with something that makes sense, get feedback from early career faculty, mid-career faculty, late career faculty, everyone agrees, and wow, it came together really well. And I knew that the downstream effects of that change are going to play out in the long term. I knew that these are discussions on impact. Now anymore you have to put 250 words or less. Don't tell us about how busy you've been. Tell us about what change your work has made in whatever sphere of influence it is. It's causing a change in conversation. Already I can see promotion packages coming up where assistant professors are really in tune with this. They're able to in a very articulative fashion, able to speak about what difference their work has made. Assistant professors with just 5 years under their belt are able to do this. And I think what is happening is in the primary committees, there's more discussion about this, not just how many papers have you written, how many dollars have you gone. Of course, you need a threshold. You need to show the minimum that you can do to be successful at the job. I think all that has to happen. But the context of what the impact of the work has been, I think, is going downstream. There's great discussions happening in the primary committees. I especially think our assistant professors, associate professors that have just recently come through the system are very attuned with this. And so I think that's one of the really good things that have happened. I think trying to create policies for faculty that help reduce barriers has been something I'm really happy about. The childcare expense reimbursement for travel, modified duties for childcare. Modified duties for childcare, what it does is basically, when faculty is going to have a change of duties because of childcare time that goes in, how to do it in a way that it's not an IOU with the head, right? So at the back end, it's an IOU between the head and the college anymore, right? And the faculty just applies to the college. And I think that's brought down barriers as well to success for faculty. So reducing barriers. The other thing I like is celebrating our faculty. What's been really interesting is this faculty recognition program. Oh my goodness. I have really, really enjoyed learning about what impact our faculty are having and putting it in place, getting nominations out. I'll tell you, I'm so proud because much of this work, much of this impact is unwritten. People forget about it. When you're trying to find out the impact a faculty member's work has, and you call up colleagues in industry or in government who 5 years ago were working, and you kind of dig up, it's almost investigative journalism. You find out about what difference it made, and you help put a nomination together. It helps our own faculty figure out, oh my God, I did not know all this transpired with what came out of the lab. That has been really rewarding. I mean, for me, for faculty, trying to put, is there a system, a process we can do to scale this up? I've been really happy to do that. We're not there all the way yet, but certainly has been a highlight for me. And generally speaking, I love the ability to help other faculty succeed. With the Shah Family Global Innovation Lab, so many of the faculty, I was really proud how they used the partnerships, leveraged them, and went out and got really amazing funding from agencies that we weren't getting this funding in the past. So I think all these are, things that I really enjoy about the jobs. Believe it, there are many things that are difficult in the job, right? When it comes to faculty grievances, having to deal with some of those issues. But I really think faculty success, streamlining our hiring process, putting in place a systematic dream hire process to get great faculty talent, all that has been a lot of fun and rewarding for me personally.
I think that program that you created for the Trailblazer for Diversity has been something so significant, and I think the School of Mechanical Engineering benefited a lot from that. So maybe you could expand a little.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Luciano. On the spot you forget some key details. So actually, this is a program that Luciano, Barrett, and Julio Tahira, all of us created together, Trailblazers in Engineering program. And what it does is it brings top, underrepresented minority talent, finishing PhDs, postdocs around the nation together for a professional development experience that's kind of centered on their identity, around their identity. Probably about 120, at this point, about 110 to 120 fellows have gone through the program. There's a Latinx program. There is a Black Trailblazers program. And I'm really proud of the fact that about 18 or 20 of them, 18 of them at this point have made it to academia already. About 70 plus of them have gone on to prestigious postdocs. Only 2 went to industry. Not that I have anything against industry, but the goal of the program is really to change the demographics in engineering faculty, among engineering faculty. And so that's been a great program with support from Duke Energy, with support from colleagues like Luciano, Julio, Tahira, Philip Dunstan, that we've been able to do, and I'm really proud of it as well.
We ran out of time, but we really want to thank Dr. Rahman for this.
Gracias.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, for taking the time to come today, and look forward to the next several days of the visit. Thank you. Tenga buen día.
Gracias,
Suerte
igualmente.
con todo.
Igualmente.